Authority will come to order. Please join me in the Pledge to Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item not listed on the agenda. Are there any members of the public to speak tonight?
I have no speaker cards.
I'm sorry?
I have no speaker cards.
No, okay, right. Okay. Approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Romick, second by who?
Hudson.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is the consent calendar, and I would like for you to show me as abstaining on item 2.8.9. I have a conflict of interest on that. It's authorizing a payment to PG&E. PG&E is a client of my architectural firm. So we have a motion on the rest of the consent calendar? Okay, motion by Arnerick, second by Pierce. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, our next item, I believe, is item 4A10, legislative update.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. First of all, we want to start by commending the leadership and vision of the board in driving us to push the envelope when it comes to transportation innovation. None of this, frankly, could be even possible without the board's leadership and vision. Since we were first brought on about a year ago, we've been very lucky to be part of a great, fantastic government relations and policy team led by Randy and Lindsay. But really, it's about the entire CCTA team. We interact with many folks on the team on a regular basis. And honestly, we work for a number of different entities across this country. And it's been a real pleasure and honor to do this with CCTA. So we thank you for letting us work with all of you on some really important and, frankly, very neat things that have some local and significant national ramifications. During the course of 2017, we have worked on a number of items driven by the board and the leadership here in the approved 2017 Federal Legislative Advocacy Platform, and then some. It was great to have a CCTA delegation out in D.C. earlier this year, led by Commissioner Hudson. It was a great time, and also participating were a number of team members led by the handsome and charming Executive Director, Mr. Iwasaki. We met with a number of... Well, probably more the charming side, I guess. Debonair. We met with a number of key federal stakeholders in DOT, Department of Energy, Congress, and its relevant committees, I think as Commissioner Hudson can attest to. We were on the go pretty much from morning to night, and we had a number of positive outcomes that have developed or either in development or have been already resolved. So first, perhaps we can start with a kind of a broad macro view. I think we all read the papers and watch the news, and so perhaps kind of a few touch points on tax reform. Both the House and Senate have passed party line budget resolutions in October that would set aside about $1.5 trillion in tax cuts over the coming 10-year budget window. This sets up each chamber, the House and Senate, to move forward with deciding where these tax cuts go and where tax increases, if any, might go. The House started their work, as you may have seen, on tax reform on November 6th. The bill is scheduled to hit the floor tomorrow. House Rules Committee has offered and considered any number of amendments that have been proposed. A large number of them tend to be Democratic. A couple of key items out there, and certainly I think probably has some relevance here in California, and that is the repeal of the deduction for state and local income and sales taxes. It's generated some significant concern from many states, certainly this one, but other high-tax states such as New York State and Illinois. The House tax bill touches upon transportation matters in a number of ways. First, you may have seen the White House economic team has publicly pushed for tax reform to include a fix for the Highway Trust Fund. As you may recall in previous briefings, there is a shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund since it's largely generated by gas tax revenues from diesel trucks and gas cars. There is an unsustainable factor. There's more money going out of the Highway Trust Fund, which pays for transit, which pays for our roads, it pays for ITS and any number of things. There's more money going out than there's coming in, so Congress has stepped in on a number of occasions to infuse additional dollars to keep the Highway Trust Fund solvent. The current tax package does not address this issue. There may be some continuing relevance down the road in how to fund the Highway Trust Fund, which is roughly about $50 billion a year annually across the country. Another outcome that has come out of this is the protection of municipal bonds and their tax-exempt status. That has come out a number of times as a potential revenue generator. But both the House bill and the Senate bill is silent on that, so the status quo remains. So municipalities, rest assured. One item that has created a little bit of consternation is something that has been a big incentive for transit dependent communities, and that is the commuter tax benefit for transit and parking as well, which is roughly about, I think, $260 a month. The House bill will change that slightly. Employees will be able to deduct those expenses, but employers will not. And so it's kind of a split the baby type of proposition. That is one item that came out. The Senate bill released their tax package just last week and started debate just earlier this week. Monday, the Senate Finance Committee, which has jurisdiction over taxes, started their markup on Monday. It's continuing yesterday. The chairman of that Senate committee has released some additional changes as of yesterday or late last night, about 10:40 p.m. Eastern Time. They have a few items in there in terms of infrastructure financing investment instruments. It preserves municipal bonds and private activity bonds. The bill also changes the commuter benefit to eliminate the employer deduction and also completely eliminates all state and local tax deductions, including property tax. So that's a pretty significant part of the Senate bill that slightly differs from the House bill. And again, that is generated primarily from the fact that it's going to pull more money into our general revenues in our Treasury. Both of these dueling tax bills aim to take effect at the end of this current tax year, which sets up a very ambitious timeline for both to move forward if they want this done by the end of December. There are a number of items on the House floor and the Senate floor. We still have to pass a budget. We are under, as we call it, a continuing resolution, which has established baseline funding from the previous year into the existing year. That timeline is set to expire sometime in December. There is some discussion now that there will be another continuing resolution to kick the football into next year. But there are some preparations already beginning for a full-year omnibus appropriations bill, which will package all 13 appropriations bills and change the funding levels for each of that. So that is still up for consideration. So a number of things are still kind of moving targets, so to speak. From an AV perspective, since, as you know, this agency and the leadership of the board and the CEO and everyone else has really pushed this into autonomous vehicles with the wonderful Gomentum station. There have been a number of movements on the AV front from Congress. Congress has pushed a number of legislative measures in the House. The House recently passed an AV reform bill. The Senate is considering some legislation as well on autonomous vehicles. The Senate Commerce Committee is still moving forward on that. So there are a couple of legislative measures that are moving in both chambers. The administration is also pushing for a number of items as well, and that they are revising some of the guidelines as it pertains to autonomous vehicles. I certainly think that we can thank Randy on a number of fronts in leading this charge. A couple of, the last time I had the opportunity to speak here, Randy just spoke at the House Subcommittees on Highways and Transit, chaired by Congressman Sam Graves. It was a members-only, invite-only, closed-door briefing to discuss the state of AVs and innovative best practices. This panel was attended by a number of members of Congress, certainly a number of Republicans, on that subcommittee, and that subcommittee as background has jurisdiction not only over autonomous vehicles, but all the agencies and the funding streams associated with that. So that was a very positive outcome in terms of continuing to push kind of the best practices and the innovation that this agency is leading there. This summer, he was also a witness on a panel hosted by the Congressional Caucus on Unmanned Systems, which focuses on autonomous vehicles and drones. As I mentioned, the House and Senate have both moved some legislative measures pertaining to autonomous vehicles. One item that particularly hits close to home is a very successful or halfway successful endeavor led by Mr. Iwasaki and Ms. Willis, in which we push a number of advocacy items to work with both Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, our wonderful congressman from the area, and Leader Pelosi to include a new $100 million pot of funds in the House mark for autonomous vehicle research and testing programs. This would be included as the part of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's FY 2018 budget. This has never been done before. Never happened before, and it's a very significant slug of funds. The Senate, unfortunately, did not include any funding in their package. We're hopeful that we will continue to advocate in the final budget that some level of funding, if not the entire amount of funding, will be retained and included in the full FY 2018 budget. And what particularly was good with this program, it was crafted to include preferential language for DOT proving grounds, of which Gomentum Station is one of them, and pushes for testing applications for trucking, given the Gomentum Station's collaboration, and one of the first in the nation collaboration with what was formerly known as Auto, and then was acquired by Uber as part of the Advanced Transportation Group's autonomous trucks. That does provide a level of preference in terms of where federal funding decides to go. As I mentioned, NHTSA released on September 12th their updated automated driving systems, a vision for safety 2.0 guidance. This is kind of the U.S. DOT's idea of where this should head and what are the guidelines. Secretary Chow of the U.S. DOT just indicated last week that they're working out on the 3.0 guidance, so I guess they're moving very, very quickly. And finally, and some would argue very importantly from a very ground floor perspective, Gomentum and CCTA were finally able to obtain permission from NHTSA to put the revolutionary Easy Mile autonomous shuttle buses on public roads as part of Phase 2 testing. This was something that I think, as the team here can attest to, and the folks at Gomentum, took quite a bit of time to get through the federal bureaucracy. But I think by moving forward, and frankly with Leader Pelosi's help and Congressman DeSaulnier's help and our friends in Congress, we're able to finally shake things loose to get that authorization process moving and get that waiver granted. So that's very exciting because, frankly, that is really one of the first in the nation deployments of comprehensive and sustained testing of AVs on public roads. A couple of touch points on administration. We mentioned the issue with respect to autonomous vehicles. But there is, I think, one of the interesting outcomes of this election was a strong impetus and goal-setting objective of cutting and streamlining a lot of the red tape that is associated with large organizations. In August and September, the Council on Environmental Quality published an executive order to enhance and modernize the federal environmental review and authorization process. This EO directs federal agencies to complete environmental reviews within 2 years, which seems long, but I think in the scheme of things, probably light speed. Jointly issue record of decisions and issue permits and authorizations within 90 days. The whole point behind this is how do we streamline project delivery and get projects done more quickly and eliminate some of the inefficiencies that are frankly just outcomes of having large organizations. The USDOT is also seeking input from stakeholders to help identify rules and regulations that unjustifiably delay or prevent completion of transportation projects. So all of these things, this is a proposal that will allow states like California to consolidate some of the environmental review documents into one document instead of producing separate CEQA and NEPA documents. So there are a number of elements out there that hopefully will create a much better environment for streamlining projects and getting them done more quickly and making them more cost effective. I think we are all working together, and CCTA is taking the lead in working in providing input to the administration on how to do that and how to do a better job. One item, while doesn't have a, we're talking about aviation now. We're switching to one of the big agenda items for this Congress is passing a federal FAA reauthorization package. That is a mechanism that funds all of our nation's airports through what is called the Airport Trust Fund. There was one element in there in a provision that we've been pushing in conjunction with the other self-help counties, and again under the leadership of Lindsay and Randy here, and that is working with some members of Congress dealing with how the FAA is pushing a new reg. Now, this new policy the FAA is doing will reverse kind of a 30-year policy of allowing general sales tax revenues to be levied on aviation fuels for spending on general municipal purposes, including transportation. This new policy, which is anticipated will go into effect next year, will require those funds be spent on airport purposes only. Now, obviously, that could be a very significant change for California counties who passed voter initiatives and bonded against these revenues. This is a real problem for self-help counties such as Contra Costa, because it could result in downgrade in bond ratings and cost us real money. So that thing is not super high on the radar screen where everyone's reading about it in the papers, but it could affect the bond rating for many, many different counties and entities, as you well know. So Congresswoman Napolitano down in Southern California and her colleague Congressman Lowenthal offered an amendment that would help provide relief to Contra Costa and other self-help counties to kind of push the FAA back and tell them, hey, slow down here, you're going to screw up our bond rating. That particular measure, unfortunately, was not included in the House Transportation Committee markup of the FAA bill, but they will renew their efforts on the House floor should it be brought on the House floor. There are a number of complications with the FAA bill unrelated to this particular issue, dealing with privatization of an air traffic control system, a whole set of different issues, but that is still one of the priorities of this Congress simply because the Airport Trust Fund has expired. So this concludes my briefing for today. Again, once again, thanks for the opportunity to work for such a dynamic agency, and we're very thankful to help play a small role in helping you carry out your Washington agenda. I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, Jason, you said the federal government is eliminating the deduction for commuter benefits? Or did we? The point is, did we have deductions for commuter benefits? Now they're taking it away, or?
There's currently a law in the books of commuter tax benefits which provides a tax-deductible contribution of up to $260 a month for the employer and or employee to contribute in this. The bills moving through the House and the Senate take away a portion of that deduction, specifically for the employer, I believe, in the Senate side.
Okay. The reason I ask is I think we need to find out if this neuters the state commuter benefit program to how much Glazer's bill, and it's an Air District sponsored program. I guess we ought to find out what's going on, Karen. But I mean, all the work that went into this, if it's not worth it because you just lost half of what you thought you were going to get, it's going to be a hard sell. This place has commuter benefits, Bishop Ranch. I think I'd like to know what the effect of that one is.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chair, before we go on to the next item,
Yes, Mr. Tatson, question.
are you going to do state, or are you going to move on to item?
We're moving on to
Okay.
the.
So I just have a quick comment on item 4A10. I'm filling in for Commissioner Trotter, and I'm wondering if the APC could consider at some point whether, since we're on the topic of legislation, whether 2018 would be a good year to seek legislative approval to extend the termination date for our half-cent sales tax authorization. Because if we start now, we could do it as a non-emergency bill. Right now, we term out in 2020.
That makes sense.
No, well, for the additional one we're allocated, but right now, we would need state, well, we're going to need state authorization if we ever want to go forward after 2020.
You want to put that on the
Well, I'm just asking for the APC to
upcoming
consider
agenda
future
for
agenda.
discussion?
I think we're good through the end of 2020.
Right, no, we
So
are.
it gets us through that general election.
Right.
But you're right, it might not hurt to extend it now so it's not a hurry up.
Put it on our list.
Let's put it on the list for future agenda item.
Thank you.
Okay? So are we now on item 4B4? Okay. 4B4, adoption of Resolution 17-55-G, finding fiscal year 2017-18 Transportation Fund for Clean Air Projects. Meet Bay Area Air Quality Management District cost effectiveness criteria.
Good evening, Chair Butt and Commissioners. So this item is a requirement by the Air District that we adopt a resolution so that the CMA Board can make a determination that the projects that we're proposing for this year do meet the cost effectiveness criteria of the Air District. The Air District does provide us with spreadsheets and default numbers that we use, and as long as the final numbers are under $150,000 per ton, then we meet the Air District criteria for that. What I wanted to do is take an opportunity real quick here to show you some of the innovative projects that the 511 Contra Costa program is doing to help us meet those cost effectiveness criteria required by the Air District. Now, this program is not only funded with the TFSA funds, but it's also funded with Measure J Commute Alternative Funds Program 17. So about a year and a half ago now, CCTA took over the management of the Central and East County portion of the 501 Contra Costa program, and we continue to provide funding to both West County and Southwest County to provide programs in those parts of the county. And then each of the offices also provide some countywide programs. But CCTA kind of manages what the entity of 501 Contra Costa is, which is really just a brand for our TDM program. One of the things, you've all seen this slide before, it's everything that CCTA does. Obviously, the red circled items are the big ticket items in the 501 Contra Costa program, but we do touch all the other items that have check marks there. We encourage pedestrian and bicycle modes of travel. We provide incentives for BART buses, and when we get to Richmond Ferry Service, we'll be doing marketing and probably providing incentives for people who use that ferry service as well. Let me get into some of the innovative programs. So in May, we started a $30,000 pilot program with Scoop Rideshare. These are funds that were already dedicated to the Drive Less portion of the 501 Contra Costa, where we provide incentives for people to do things other than drive alone in their single occupant vehicles. In this particular program, we give a $2 incentive to people who use Scoop. The incentive is provided on the rider side to the rider so that the rider doesn't have to pay the full amount to the driver for providing that trip. At the time we launched this program, Scoop had limited places where they called open work sites in the Bay Area. They were mostly in Pleasanton and then along the peninsula and in the South Bay. So what we were doing is providing incentives to Contra Costa residents who were commuting to those locations. To date, we're probably two-thirds through the budget of that program, and these are the results we've seen to date. A significant use of the program, and the nice thing here is while these numbers, we hope to be better, they're still very good, and the nice thing is they're growing. So you can see 7,800 matched rider trips, almost 1,400 unique matched users have received the incentive dollars from this program, from this pilot. We're just starting a phase 2. We started that this month. There's been significant kind of upgrades in the Scoop system. They opened Bay Area wide, so now anybody who works in Contra Costa can take a Scoop trip. Anybody who lives here and works here or works someplace other than the Peninsula or South Bay can also take a Scoop trip. So essentially the whole Bay Area is open to what we call Scoopers, people who use the Scoop trip. The big thing here is that we're now offering as part of the second phase a $2 driver incentive if they offer a ride as a Scoop rider. Again, we were seeing that a lot of people who were trying to take advantage of the first pilot didn't have a driver contact them. They put themselves out there as I need a ride, but they never had a driver come aboard. So we wanted to incentivize people to drive in the system as well. I know Nikki is here from BART. BART has worked hard with Scoop also, and they opened up the Pleasant Hill and the Concord BART stations to guarantee up until 10 a.m. that a Scoop driver who brings a ride to BART has a place to park, and that parking is free for the person who scoops there. Also, Bishop Ranch opened a Scoop incentive program, and we're working and communicating with both BART and Bishop Ranch to make sure that these incentives are being taken advantage of. This is one we're real excited about. It's an application that hasn't been open to the public yet. It's called Driver Miles. It's still in a closed beta. Volunteers, people here at CCTA, County Connection, and Stantec have been able to download this application. It's a gamification. We're calling it a gamification application where you incentivize people to take alternative modes. The nice thing about this is you download it, you open an account, and you just leave it running, and it automatically detects all of your trips, whether it's a single occupant vehicle, a carpool. Now, a carpool, the person who rides with you also has to have the Driver Miles application, but it automatically reads it and recognizes the carpool. It knows if you take BART, it knows if you take transit. They're working on the algorithms to know if you're walking or riding a bike. And so it knows the mode you're taking, and it calculates the miles based on that mode. And then the miles are redeemable for discounts and at establishments and different services. The downside is they know where you're going, but it's obviously all that information is kept to them, and they can't share that with us or with anybody. The thing we're really excited about this is if we do a sponsorship with them and we provide incentives, we can determine who we want to incentivize, what trips we want to incentivize. And for instance, if somebody carpools to a location and they have an easy way to take a bus back home, we can set up the software so it will recognize that, and it can ping that person with a free bus pass. So that person, and it can encourage them to, hey, here's a free bus pass. Why don't you try and take the bus home? So, and then people who use those alternative modes can get extra miles that they can redeem. Here's a couple screenshots of some of the rewards. There was a BART trip that Corinne took. It was actually very accurate, and it works pretty well. Still working out some of the bugs, but that's why we download it, and that's why we're trying it out to see. And the folks at Driver Miles have been working with us very closely and are very excited about all of our input on this so that they can help develop the software as best as they can.
Commissioner Anderson has a question.
So question about redeeming the free trips. Do you store a Clipper card number on there, and that's how the trip gets rewarded? Because, of course, those of us who are in County Connection know you can only use Clipper or a ticket. We're not equipped to use digital barcodes. Neither is BART.
That's something we'll have to work out with them and the software. We'll have to figure out some way to do that.
I would think if you got people to register their Clipper card with that, then you could get credited on your Clipper card for the value of a BART ride or for a County Connection. So
I know County Connection and Tri-Delta are both looking at a a phone-based reader that works with Clipper. And so in this case, this redeemable coupon could go to their phone. It would be a barcode that could be read. Here's a couple more screens that if you go to the analytics, it shows you exactly what your trip modes look like. In this instance, if you click on the carpool, then there's the carpool. It shows you CO2 saved, potential cost of the trip, the miles that you carpooled, and things like that. So there's lots of good information in there, even for the user to see kind of how they're doing in their commute. Another item that we plan on working on this year, the 511 Contra Costa Bike Mapper has actually been in existence since 2010, although it needs some real design rework, so we've taken it off the website for now. We plan on reintroducing it both on the website and potentially as a mobile application. The picture on here is actually kind of the next phase that we want to emulate. It's a step above what we have now. It's what they did in Tahoe. And the idea of showing this is it shows you actually that the Class 2, Class 1, Class 2 and Class 3 trails. It shows you potentially construction locations that might affect a bicyclist trip. It uses an OpenStreetMap, which is an open code source, so that people can go in and who have authorization, and they can add like where construction is locating based on their trip. What it also does is it can tell elevation changes. So what we want to do is be able to set up where a person can put in a profile of the kind of trip they want to take. No hills, heavy duty hills, and when they set their origin and destination, it will route a trip for them based on the profile that they've put in there. The last one I'll show you is something that we just wrapped up our second year on this, the Text Your Commute Challenge. It's a 3-month campaign that just ended this month. It's basically a text message-based system where people get pinged every day, how did you commute this morning, and they can choose different modes. And then in the afternoon they get another ping, or in the evening, how did you commute on your trip home. Then they would receive prizes at the end of the campaign, receive prizes based on the person who took the most clean trip. So anything other than an SOV would be a clean trip. It's kind of a trust-based system. We don't have any way in this case yet to verify these trips, but it's just kind of another fun gamification. And what it really does is it provides an opportunity for communication with the commuters, a daily engagement between 501 Contra Costa and the commuters, so we can have an opportunity to engage with the commuters on a daily basis for future programs. So this actually was a project that came out of the WCTAC office. Danelle Carey started this a year ago. Unfortunately, we lost Danelle. She went to Washington, D.C., took a job in Washington, D.C., so we're sorry to see her innovation go to the East Coast. We enjoyed her out here. But again, a very successful program that engaged, as you can see there, 411 participants, and you can see the almost 8,000 clean trips were taken in that 3-month period. I think that's all I have, so I just wanted to share those thoughts with you. We're going to continue to do these innovative programs. I knew I would forget. I wanted to introduce, before I let you go, Kirsten Riker. Kirsten, can you stand up? So Kirsten also works for Stantec. She's in charge of the bicycle and bicycle safety programs here for Central and East County. She does such an amazing safety, assembly at both elementary, middle school, and middle schools. Randy has seen it. Lindsay's seen it. It's very impressive. She's quite the movie or actor, on stage actor. I just wanted to invite any of you, if you're interested in going to a school and seeing it, let me know, and I'll work with Kirsten to set up a time when they're doing an assembly and you can see it. It's very impressive, and the kids just absolutely love it.
Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, I probably should look this up before I ask the question so I don't look stupid, but you have down here that the effectiveness criteria has to be equal to or less than 150,000 per ton. Okay. can't we use care areas where possible and go up to 500? Or am I thinking of a different program?
It's a different program. So depending on the program, or depending on the projects that you're doing, there could be different cost effectiveness numbers. Rideshare projects are $150,000.
Just locked
They used to be $90,000. They just recently, last year, raised it to $150,000.
Well, you can thank the chair of the mobile source for that.
Commissioner Arnott?
Peter, I just want to say thank you to everybody. These are some really exciting things, and particularly I'm really interested because I hike a lot, and I always have to look up elevation. I can't climb more than an extra 2,500 feet from wherever I start, and that's a big lift. But this bicycle, is that an application that is downloadable, or is it only on our website? How are you planning that?
Right now, it's just on the website.
I saw that. Is there a way?
And it's really not even functioning right now because of some issues we were having. But we're working with the developer of that to do some upgrades and get that going. And we also want to make it a mobile app.
Great. If you run into problems, I know a group of high school kids. Believe it or not, they can write an app for this in a day, and they'll have it beta tested by the end of the week on 1,000 people. This is great. I think that's a wonderful app, and we're putting a lot of money in bicycles. I think we need to kind of push that and really make it an app and brand it with our name with it so we're credit for it. But I think it's really important we do it.
We'll get in touch with you on those names, and if it's not for this app, it's for other stuff. Because
they have a hackathon, too, and then they have another group that goes out to try to hack it to make sure that it really works.
Yeah, we're very excited about these opportunities and want to put it in the minds of the young people that know how to do this kind of stuff to help us move this needle.
Thank you, guys. Nice job.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah. Will this app will have snack shacks? It'll show you where you can actually get. She's saying yes.
Yeah. So part of it is, and we can do different things. So the one in Tahoe has where the bike shops are. So if you're riding along and you get a flat and you need to take it to a shop, we were talking about potentially where snack shacks are, or water fountains, or public restrooms, or any of that kind of stuff that's important to somebody who's out riding their bike that they might need these facilities to use. That there could be a layer on there that would bring that information up. We're also we're also looking at potentially putting air quality conditions, because that stuff's all available anyway. It's just a matter of linking it in. Weather, if it's going to be a real windy day, air quality conditions, people can decide if they even really want to go out and ride on that particular day.
Yeah, because now I'm on a very serious note, because safety would be an extremely, if you start climbing elevation, people don't know. We have a place in the mountains, and man, the first snow, people drop like crazy shoveling snow and up in that elevation. And so I'm just wondering, safety, at least a check-in spot or the closest or something. So, closest respirator.
Generally what we've found in these is that the bike shops are very willing to work with us on these because, these are their customers. And so that's what we do. We hope to engage the bike shops. We're even thinking they could provide, 10% off if somebody comes in that uses the app and so on. So we're trying to think of the best ways to kind of build this and then roll it out.
Commissioner Pierce?
Thank you. The bike safety programs that we used to do when we had this at Transpac were absolutely amazing. Are they pretty much the same program? I would suggest that once you have your schedule set, you just send that out to all of us and we can let you know when we can show up, because frankly, this is one of the best programs you will ever see. You will learn something yourself. And I know at least at a couple that I've been to, we had the opportunity to see some folks from our local bike shop in Clayton who were also on a stunt team, and they did trick riding demonstrations. And I got to tell you, those kids were absolutely enraptured by them. And what they did was they stressed the safety. They really stressed the safety, and the kids started to pay attention. So I would encourage you to go see them if you get a chance. They were really phenomenal.
And if I could just add, we do those in the San Ramon Valley through Street Smarts and at every one of our middle schools and now elementary schools. And it's a whole BMX assembly. And it's the same thing where when they can see someone doing something amazing, when that same guy says, put on your helmet, makes all the difference.
Amy?
Pay attention. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Peter, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for working with all the agencies to make these programs work. I just wanted to follow up on the SCOOP program, and we're very excited. And Arinda, I know the BART, the other day, our BART director, Salzman, came out and talked about the program and how important it is. And I think one of the challenges that we're dealing with everywhere is that last mile. And obviously there's a finite parking capacity. So I know all the communities that have the BART stations are excited about this rolling out. And I guess the question for you is, do we have a way of tracking? Are we going to be getting some regular statistical feedback, and how are we going to be seeing that in terms of how the response is? I have a feeling it's going to be incredible, because I think this is a tool that, we were talking, for example, parents who have to drop their children off at school, and by the time they get to school, there are no parking places, and this opens up a whole new world of people who can have access BART. So could you provide a little bit of input in terms of how we're going to be evaluating this? And
yeah, so I forgot to mention when I was on the slide showing the results to date that the beauty of that is, previously we would have to do an end-of-the-year survey and, spend a lot of admin money and surveying people and getting it back and tabulating it. This is all given to us on a monthly basis by SCOOP. These are real trips that we're really taking. The distances are real. The CO2 calculations are real. The miles are real. And we get them every month. And we can potentially get them more often than that if we wanted to. So what you're hopefully approving tonight as far as cost effectiveness numbers, based on these numbers for this next year, that cost effectiveness is going to get a lot better, because those numbers are based on, our current numbers are based on the default numbers that the Air District gets us, and what we're seeing in real life is it's much more cost effective. It's much more cost effective. So we're really looking forward to seeing, once we get kind of this pilot going a little bit more, really digging into these numbers and seeing what we have. And then we have an opportunity to go back to SCOOP and say, look, we're missing something here. We're missing this data. How can we get this? And they'll work with us to get that.
Are there any public speakers on this item? This is an action item. We have a motion.
So, second.
Okay, motion by Pierce, second by Arnrich. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. So this brings us to correspondence and communications. I got a letter from William B. Walker, Director of Health Services, about supporting the CCTA's grant application under Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. I'll turn it over to the clerk, and it can go in the record. Anybody else have anything on communications? Hearing none.
I do, to add. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, in the communications, if you note, there's a letter from the City of Concord to MTC with regards to the initial proposal that STIP money be allocated to jurisdictions based on housing production. And I just first of all know that, CCTA, of course, has been weighing in very heavily on this in concurrence with the issues as they've been outlined in the Concord letter. But first of all, I want to thank Concord for sending in that letter. That item has been put off for a couple of years in order to be able to have a broader discussion of the criteria for
6 months.
Oh, 6 months, yes. 6 months. The action is not affecting the 2018 STIP. Any discussions by MTC will affect the 2020 STIP. So that's a two years out. But as Julie had said, we're going to begin the discussions right away. Obviously, we have serious concerns about this this proposal and how it would impact the long-term planning for our STIP resources. And in fact, great sort of concern that it really wouldn't result in any, additional housing production at all. So this will continue to be the same issue today. At MTC, we approved the additional funds that have come out, the transit funds that have come out of SB1. The population share of those funds has been put in reserve. There are discussions going on. Those would affect particularly our smaller operators, County Connection, Tri-Delta, and WestCat. And we are equally concerned about proposals that have been floating around to use those funds for different purposes other than where we think they should be going in terms of providing operational funding for those transit organizations. So that's those two issues are going to be forefront in our minds. I know that we have been also well represented at the partnership meeting, which is essentially all the agencies, the staff level agencies, along with MTC, in expressing our concerns about these issues and been advocating very strenuously. So that's going to be ongoing, and we will be looking to all of you to elicit your support as this issue goes forward. So it'll be coming back to the commission in the next, as Julie indicated, in 6 months for additional discussion.
Thank you. Moving on to associated committee reports, are there any? Seeing none, commissioner and staff comments. The chair has no comment. Commissioners? Commissioner Mitchell? Commissioner Pierce?
Yes. I would like to say that thank you for sending several of us to the Focus Conference. We enjoyed it. It's not quite the same experience when you're commuting from home. You miss some of the evening networking, if we want to put it that way, but that's okay. It was good. Our total expenses, I think mine was $18 because I had to spend $12 parking somewhere during the day because the BART station was full. Strange how that works.
Did the escalator work? Oh, sorry, Joel.
No, it didn't. It hasn't for 3 months. So anyway, so thank you for sending us to the Focus Conference. It was really inspiring. We were talking about it a little bit today at MTC about some of the innovation. One of the speakers was from the Salesforce company, and he had projections about how technology is going to move us into the future and how it is going to be augmenting our lives. And it was a dynamic speech. It was absolutely amazing to envision what our future may be and that it will be here before we know it. Now, what's interesting is there are some on staff at MTC who don't believe that we will be in autonomous vehicles for over 20 years, which we don't really believe. So I today at the MTC meeting suggested that we might need a field trip to Gomentum Station and a presentation by our executive director to tell them about what's really happening in the real world and how many companies are doing things, and it doesn't need to convert the entire fleet because we can convert part of the existing fleet to autonomous self-driving vehicles with what some of our people testing out at Gomentum are actually doing. And I think that really caught a lot of our commissioners off guard. They had not even thought about the fact that we can convert existing fleet vehicles to autonomous vehicles. So I think they are intrigued. There was a request to, yes, please, they would like a field trip. So I was plugging us. So that was fun. On another note, Dave and I had the honor of going down to San Luis Obispo a couple of weeks ago to see Randy be honored by Cal Poly as one of their honored alumni. And it was incredibly inspiring. Very proud to be there. Randy was honored for his work out of the engineering college, kind of a lifetime achievement award, really, is kind of what I would look at it as. And he was up there with some mighty, amazing people, and we know he's amazing, but it was really cool to see him honored by Cal Poly for all the work he has done, mentoring students and helping them get jobs and seeking internships for them, and being a real role model for someone giving back. And it was just really inspiring to be there, and I'm sure Dave will add his 2 cents to that. But thank you, Randy, for allowing us to join in on that with you.
Well, I not only almost added my 2 cents, I went after the president. The idiot couldn't pronounce Randy's name. I almost got my daughter fired, who works there. How in the heck can you mispronounce that name? Iwaski. How can you be president of the... Fortunately, the vice president was a little bit smarter, and he cut me off, and everybody was apologetic. But it was a very, very good night. I'll let Randy do the rest of it. The drive home was long, but the Focus Our Future, I think you nailed it. It's just a tremendous networking. Maybe we ought to have that one in Hawaii if I can't get APTA and AWMA. But I can't say this serious enough. Ivan did a great job. Ivan's panel was spot on. The rest of those guys were mediocre C- or Dodger fans. But the reality is we came out very well at this. I would recommend it to members of the board to go over there. Julie's talking about 18 for parking. I've got a handicap, so it doesn't cost me anything to park outside the structure. Mine, I know, that's terrible. Mine was 0. I believe Janet's 0. I mean, this was the best value for our buck, I think, that we produced in a long time. And, that's, if you've got it in your own backyard, you should do it. And really can't say enough for stressing, hey, you going to this thing or not? I almost wished I could have done the tour for the Transbay Terminal until Julie said, if you want it, I'll get it for you now. And then I want to circle back to the most important thing. Julie, Scott Haggerty, Karen, I can't remember the guy's name from San Francisco, couldn't jump down Steve's throat. You need to get behind this autonomous vehicle. This lip service that we're getting out of MTC has to stop. I don't think you take them to go minimum. How fast can we get these darn things on the street in San Ramon? We'll put him around there on the streets and see if he catches on fast enough with a few people in there that he recognizes, like the owner's neighbor.
Commissioner Abelson.
Yes, I won't repeat anything that's been already said, but I must say that I was really interested. One of the areas that I concentrated on was complete streets, since I know in my area we're trying to turn San Pablo Avenue into a complete street. And I uncovered some information that I think just shows what you can really do when you go to a conference like this. Not only do you get the big picture, but you get the small picture that will be a big deal if you do it wrong. And so I think I caught something that we've been struggling with in my area, which was we've talked about having the sidewalk, right, and then next to that a protected bike lane, then next to that the parking lane, next to that travel lane, right? Okay, so somebody's on this tour I was on called Better Market Street and said, we've been having a real problem with fire engines and the design where you have a separated bike lane. So imagine having a fire engine trying to go to a fire, and here's this bump thing going on along the side, the entire length, so that you can't actually get your fire hose to the building you're trying to prevent from burning, because it's too far out.
Oh, I see. They're in the middle of the street.
Exactly. I mean, it's obvious when you hear it like that, but I've never heard anyone, I've never heard the light bulb turn on with anyone. But this is a huge amount of information on and helps to prevent doing things the wrong way. And I think it just really points out how valuable a conference like this can be. Because not only do you get this big picture that I think is really important, but also you get the nitty-gritty details. And so I'm really appreciative, and I'm trying very hard to put my cost of attending at zero, but I did actually spend $6, I think it was, in transportation costs. But it was a great conference, and I would always recommend it to anyone. Thank you.
Okay, executive staff comment.
Commissioners, thank you. I wanted to recognize Ivan anyway. He's leaving now, but I have it on my notes here. Chris Cole and Mike Ostrom are both back there. They're like extensions of our staff. They're consultants to us. They really support the owner's side. And there's a lot of really things that are going on that we do that are pretty cool and pretty far out there. And there are also those things that we do that are very difficult sometimes in dealing with the public, the traveling public, legislators, contractors. And we're trying to do our job to make sure that the taxpayers get their quality and that they get the product that they've asked for in a very, as fast as we can go. And so they're doing a great job. I know they're getting ready to winterize the projects. We've still got some issues at San Pablo. PG&E is not moving utilities like they promised. We've got a real problem. There's delay costs associated with that. But on Balfour is what, 50% done and a little less than 50% of the dollars expended. So we're right on schedule as far as delivering that project as normal, on time and under budget, right? Right, Ivan? So everything's going well there. So I just want to recognize those guys because they don't get a lot of attention, but they do. The risk is in construction. We talk about a $7 million design contract. They're dealing with $80 million in construction that could go up or down. And so that's really where the work gets done a lot of times. But also, they're doing a lot of pretty cool, innovative things, as you heard at Focus on the Future with drones and paperless contracting and those kinds of things. And so we've had now 2 bid openings, no protests, and no problems with all the bids coming in at the same time, Don. So everything's going great. So everything's great. So I just want to recognize those 3 because they kind of toil in the background. And Tim's getting up to speed with the construction. But until you've done it, it's a difficult situation. So thank you for that. We just hired Lillian Arvizu. She's our admin assistant. She's helping out Martin Engelman, but she reports to Terry Ann. Terry Ann is growing as a supervisor. I asked her, how do you like being a supervisor? She said, I learn on a daily basis, right? It's not as easy as it looks. But Lillian has a master's degree in, I think, business administration. Is that correct? Yeah, business administration. And so she was one of 325 applicants for our administrative assistants. So I guess people want to work here for all of you. So thank you. Keep that up. I think we developed a strategy moving forward for the Brentwood Intermodal Center. I gave you an update. I just want to say BART and CCTA and other agencies have met several times to make sure that we're doing the right things, of working together. One of the things we found is that when BART realized that the bridge is going to carry their patrons that are going to drop into a potential median platform, they wanted that bridge wider. And so they've agreed, and I think our total design funding to finish from 65 to 100 is $350,000 now, but we've got that. So there's a partnership between BART, ECRFA, Transplan to get that design dollars. I think we talked to Assemblymember Frazier. In Senate Bill 5, there's $3.4 million identified for things that we need, whether it's design or right-of-way or construction. And so we're working hard to try to find the remainder of the dollars. So once we finish the design, we'll know the right-of-way requirements for the bridge where it touches down, and then ultimately where the transit center will go, the parking and all that. And then we'll be able to figure out the total cost for that bridge. And so we'll be able to leverage those $3.4 million or whatever we get. How wide? How wide is the structure now? 16.
From 10?
Yeah. So we're trying to do the right thing. And once again, what one of our messages, not only autonomous vehicles are coming, but you might want to think about how you plan the future. So if you design all your bridges to be 10 feet wide and then you want an autonomous vehicle to roll over it or something else, you're probably not going to have enough room, and it's going to look pretty funny when you have to widen. So anyway, I just want to mention it's been a great partnership. Director Keller is kind of leading the way, and we just follow him, so thank you for all the leadership there. We've been asked to be judges. I was the AGC judge. You learn a lot about innovation. Tim was the ACEC judge. I had, I think, 20 projects to review. He had like 58. So he was he was really going ahead it there. City of Concord hired a new traffic engineer, Abhishek Parikh. He's come to meet us. Very nice guy. I think that the future's bright for the City of Concord in the area of traffic operations. The University of Calgary called, and they want to investigate a similar partnership that the Northeastern University is looking at, and trying to develop a internship program with Gomentum Station for their students, because they're in geodetic engineering sensors. And so there's a lot of sensors that are being developed in this autonomous vehicle area. So who knows, we might get a Canadian university, because I'm half Canadian, right? So half Japanese, half Hawaiian. Let's see, we met with the California State Transportation Agency, Cal STA, and we're trying to go after $3.5 million. So you guys got the math there, right? $3.5 million for Gomentum Station. Tim's taking the lead, and we're very close to getting an agreement in place, and we're going to have to match that dollar for dollar, but we're excited about $3.5 million.
Mr. Iwasaki,
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you do know that one of your commissioners here is a native of Hawaii.
Yes, I do. So the reason why I say I'm half Hawaiian is when I go to Hawaii, they can pronounce Iwasaki.
It doesn't sound like a poet.
And so they welcome me with open arms, and they ask if I want Kamainerate all the time.
I know. You probably get it more than I
That's
do.
right. She hardly ever gets Kamainerate. She has a driver's license from Hawaii. I don't, but see, they go. Kamaina?
Surrendered it. I am a Kamaina, but I surrendered my Hawaii driver's license.
See, I can't even say the word Kamaina, so. It's never on the golf course. It's always in the noodle shop. They offer me the rate. ITS World Congress, 4 of us, or let's see, Jack Hall, Hisham, and I attended. I left early because I thought we were going to have a planning committee meeting. It turns out we didn't. But the focus on that conference was geared towards smart cities and the autonomous vehicle, connected vehicle programs that are going around the world. And there's been a lot of progress. I think that, did you mention about our $100 million for smart cities that's in the FUD bill? Yeah, so $100 million for smart cities. The original smart cities allocation was population between 200 and 800,000. We don't have cities within that range. But the notion is that you don't have to be a 200,000 to an 800,000 populated city in order to be smart. What you need is help. You need money generally, and then you just need some direction. And so we're excited about $100 million, a proposal for $100 million annually to help fund smart cities. So the city of Oakley, you can go out and not have to worry about getting those $34,000 or $60,000. We can hopefully help you. The only problem is you may not want to get federal funding, but it will be in federal funding. I did make a presentation on autonomous vehicles to the California Society of Municipal Analysts. I did say we should be AAA rated at least 3 times in the speech, so they got the message. And then I'll send you a clip. KIRO TV7 out of Seattle, Washington came down because Bellevue, Washington wants to do what we're doing. They want to have a first and last mile solution, and they sent a reporter and a cameraman all the way down and did this great piece on that, and I'll send you a link to that. And also, I haven't seen Voice of America. Have you seen that, Lindsay? So Voice of America came down and interviewed us as well. And then the Cal Poly thing, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come down. It was, you really don't think about the awards until when I stood up there and my mom's out there and my family, it just, I don't know, it's overcoming, I guess, and it wasn't expected. And when you get it, when I got it, I told them I'm never going to give this away. I'm never going to give this award up, because it's one of those, as you think about it more and more, I had a heck of a time getting into Cal Poly. I had a heck of a time getting out. But my God, they taught you, they taught you things that when you got your first job, they couldn't fool you on whether or not your plumb bob string was out of whack or whatever. None of those, because you learn by doing, and that's really, it's amazing. So thank you for saying all the things you said. I appreciate that. And he did get up and went after President Armstrong and say, you can't, and Barbara was there, his wife, and she's shaking his head, there goes Dave. So thank you for the support. Thank you for making him pronounce my name correctly. I appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else? Our next meeting is December 20th. That's pushing the holidays a little bit, isn't it? But
Everybody bring a gift to me.
just send your list out, Bob. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.